Shruti-smriti-purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat-padam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhashya-kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bhedu Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Gukarasto Andhakaro Vai Rukarasto Nivartakaha Andhakara Nirodhitvat Gururitya Vidhiyate Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviriyankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namasri Shankarananda Guru Padambujanmane Savilasa Mahamoha Graha Grasaika Karmane. So in the pursuit of happiness, because that is our main goal in life, that is the only goal in life really, is to be unconditionally happy. Because it is common to everyone. You can see that other things are different, but this is very common to everyone. That I want to be happy. When you say I want to be happy, the other things are included in that. The fact that I have to be there, so Sat has to be included in Ananda, and the fact that I need to be aware of being happy, so Chit is also included. And so in some ways the Sat and the Chit are secondary, if you want to look at it that way. You have to have a main objective being to be happy, and we all can relate to that. That is nothing strange about it. We don't even have to point that out. But what needs to be pointed out is that unknown to us, the happiness doesn't have to be an experience that comes and goes. It doesn't have to be, because we all want to be happy, but we don't know how to be unconditionally happy. So we are resigned to the fact that our happiness has to be conditional, and within the confines of that conditionality of happiness, we try to maximize it. So this is the normal experience of everyone. But here Vedanta comes in and says, no, there's something more you should know about. You don't need to be only conditionally happy. You can be the very nature of happiness. So that is a message which is both enlightening and also simultaneously doubtful. Because we are so conditioned to be conditionally happy that we cannot even imagine that I can be the very swarupa of happiness. So even after the message is heard, first of all, we don't even hear the message. We don't inquire about it and so on. I mean, suppose you have some kind of a get-together, like a Diwali get-together or one of the fundraisers these days, like, the Foundation for Excellence or AIF or Maitri, etc., and even our own Aim for Seva, although less so for there. So supposing you just go there and say, the next speaker is Mr. Vijay Kapoor, who's going to tell you how to be unconditionally happy. So husband and wife are probably going to look at each other and say, what? So how will their reaction be? They're not going to really give you your attention. They might be curious. They might just say, well, interesting. Let me see what this guy has to say. And when I start talking, they will probably all pick up their cell phones and say, well, let him talk. I don't know what he's talking about. Let me see what my messages are. Isn't that what's going to happen? I can guarantee you that. So even when the messages are given, we don't listen. Because we have a curtain in front of our mind which has made conditionality a certainty in our mind. This is the situation. But as they say in Kathopanishad, Kaschid dhiraha atmanam aikshat. Some people, so this is the rarity. This is the rarity. You can break through and they will at least listen. They will at least pay attention. And then out of them, then the doubts also take them away. Because this is exactly like not being able to recognize someone definitively. Now, this is what is called sakshat karanam. So, aparokshat sakshat brahman. This has to be really understood. What do you mean by aparokshat sakshat? We should not just be swayed by all these high-sounding words, aparokshat, sakshat, brahman. And we can feel good about it. Oh, this is some interesting Sanskritam. But I think we need to really understand exactly what these words mean. So there, what it means is that if a person is, as you know, we have taken this example before, so you should be familiar with it. And when I'm saying that, that should really be firmly embedded in your mind, this example, and that is that someone is coming, but the conditions under which you will definitely recognize the person have not yet happened. Have not yet happened. Why? You can see the person, so it's pratyaksha anubhava, but it's too far. Or if they are a little bit closer but you need some glasses and you forgot your glasses, so it's hazy. So you see there is a person coming, but you don't know exactly who that is. But there comes a point where, so this is what this condition where someone is there but you don't clearly identify who that is something like the learning of Vedanta with some doubts. You see, this is the way it should be looked at. And this is exactly what we said. Remember, in the last class, if you please revise this from time to time, I hope you do, because the revision of classes is very important. If you simply keep on listening with a string of classes and don't have a continuity, a sense of how that is, and that can only come through revision. So I really highly recommend, if possible, that before you start a new class, you actually go over the notes. I hope you're taking notes. If you're not taking notes, you are shortchanging yourself. So certainly you're not going to be able to revise. The revision is only possible if you really record some of the things that are being said, because they get embedded in your mind. So even if you do take notes, please revise them, because otherwise the sense of continuity will not be there. So what we had done in the last week was, we had talked about two kinds of samshaya. Samshaya means doubt. So one was pramana samshaya and one was prameya samshaya. So two different kinds of doubts. Regardless, not being able to recognize someone, even if you see the person coming, is exactly like studying Vedanta where you still have some doubts. You don't have a very clear vision of who you are. So there's some more conditions that you have to do, and this is exactly what we are studying. So the pursuit of happiness. So this is not just theoretical, that this is Nijananda, this is Vasanananda, this is Brahmananda, this is sleep, and so on and so forth. All these are pointers so that you have a very clear idea. And the clear idea is, the number one idea that you should be very clear about is that really all Ananda is you, but you have covered it with some kind of a film, and so your own Ananda you don't see being projected. All Anandas are really your own Ananda projected. But because of the Brahma, you don't see it. And so what needs to be done is that somebody points it out, hey, this is your own. Don't you see, this is your own light. This is, something like, I'm just making it up, this is something like, but I'm making it up, but something which is, I think, credible, I think. That is that suppose you are in the old style, not the digital one, but it doesn't matter, it could be even digital. So supposing you have a projector with a light, because all films have these basic ingredients. There has to be a very strong light, steady light. The light itself should not be flickering. Okay, and then there is a film which is moving in front of the strong light. And there has to be some focus, and then there also has to be a screen. So if you have these ingredients, now you have a film which is very credible. And so the elements of the film are, there is a very strong, steady light, and the light passes through a moving set of film elements. And each film element, I'm talking about the older style, I don't know how they do that in the digital one, but in the old style, each frame is slightly moving. By itself, frame number 1, the hand was here, frame number 2, his hand is here, frame number 3, his hand is here, it's all static. But in the movement, it looks like the hand is moving. So you need to have a moving film, and you also need to have some kind of a a film, some kind of a screen, which should also not be moving, and it should be colorless, it should be white. Now you have elements of a film. So now suppose just imagine this, that suppose the steady light also has consciousness in it. It's a conscious light. So if the conscious light is there and it is all light, all consciousness steady, unmoving, unchanging, never born, it's always there. And suppose you also have some ignorance. So now what happens is that the steady light is looking at the moving images on the screen and it's enjoying it, saying, wow, what is this? This is so wonderful. And then sometimes if it's a tragic movie, you may have negative emotions. Oh my God, I wish that the hero would have won, the villain would have been defeated, but I'm very sorry that happened the other way around. All this time you have emotions. Let's say we are just making it up, this kind of an analogy which is not perfect. But it's really quite close, quite frankly. So then somebody says, but do you know you are creating this whole thing? I'm happy you're enjoying it, but don't be sad because this is just a make-believe. And this is not understood by this steady light, and it says, how can that be? How is that possible? That's exactly what happens in the dream. So at the end of the thing, after the Lord dialogue and after convincing and so on and so forth, you say, oh my goodness, it is really me. This is just a make-believe. So, going back to the original example, as long as you have the doubt that who this person is, you don't have aparokshat, sakshat, drishti. But somehow when the person comes close enough, instead of having an experience which is imbued with some doubts, which prevents you from locking into the fact of who this person is, it prevents you from doing so, all of a sudden it clicks. And you say, oh, hello, I didn't know it was you, wonderful, welcome, welcome. And everything else happens. Here also in the same way, the study of Vedanta means that I have some sense that what is being talked about is makes sense. It is not just somebody poppycock. This is where the teaching of Vedanta should be without any agenda. Because if there is an agenda, like for example, supposing I charge you money, let's just take that example. I mean, I ask you for some small donations, probably I don't need it at this point, but I think it would be good for you to have some connection and some shraddha and to give you $100 once a year. That's okay. And when we used to have in-person classes, then there was some need for it. At this point, I don't have a need for it. So there's no agenda for me to charge anything. But suppose I will advertise from now on, Vedanta classes starting. Each class is $25 and you get a bulk discount for 1 year. Instead of $25, it will be down to $15. but you still have to pay $300 or $400. And here is that you have to pay by check, preferably no credit card. And so now I'm accumulating some money. I have an agenda. If I have an agenda, you know what will happen? Your learning will have more doubts. Will have more doubts. Because anytime, we are already always struggling with not being able to understand exactly what is being said. But in the process, we're trying to, close our eyes and to really understand. So we're all trying. But in that trial, if the teacher has an agenda of charging people $300 a year, then my doubts will be, I don't know if it's really worth it. Why is he doing that? What is he going to do with my money? All kinds of doubts will really proliferate in your mind. So here, the teaching has to be, hey, there's something very interesting going on. And if you want to, please listen. This is why if you want to is very important. All this Athato Brahma Jigyasa, the very first Brahma Sutra said that. And Shastra also says, please, 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 do not teach someone who doesn't want to learn. Don't. And I've made that mistake in the beginning when I was really trying to get some students so that I can also start teaching. I would go up to some people and say, I'm starting some classes, would you be interested? And I thought, all right, if I talk to 20 people, maybe 4 or 5 will say yes. And 4 or 5 did say yes, just because of just some friendship with me, but they all dropped out. Not a single one really stayed with me. It doesn't work, including my own family, my kids. Doesn't work. So you have to really want to know this. And if you do, then what needs to happen is, then at that point we say, okay, here's the methodology. I'm very happy that you are listening. I'm very happy you are committed. And that is the case. I think some of you have been with me for a long time, and I really appreciate that. But then what needs to happen is to clear your doubts. So the whole process of finding happiness in this Ananda section is really meant for this purpose. How do you get aparokshat sakshat Brahman, Brahma Jnanam? Because until then, you know something is going on, but you know that the Atma is there, my Ananda is there, but not a clear idea. So how to get that clarity, how to remove all the doubts, is really what this whole study at this phase of chapter 11 through 15 is all about. So this is a 20-minute revision and a introduction and a reiteration of exactly what we are doing. So, all right. So now let us read an important verse, which is number 107 from the Pancadasi, and the verse number 107 from the 11th chapter is a ditto copy of Bhagavad Gita verse 23 of the 6th chapter, 623. Very important, often quoted verse. So let's briefly understand it. Let's briefly go over that. It's very easy with the background that we have now. And so, but it is an important one. So let me read the verse. Let me do that in the cadence of the Bhagavad Gita. Tam vidyat sukha samyoga viyogam yoga samgitam sanishchayena yoktavyaha yogo nirvinna chetasa. Tam vidyat dukkha samyoga viyogam yoga samgitam saha nischayena yoktavyaha yogaha nirvinna chetasa. This is the verse. So what it says is, so he says yoga samgitam. So we start with yoga samgitam. So the word yoga normally means a connection, a approach and a connection is called yoga. So that's the yoga. All the chapters of Bhagavad Gita have the word yoga associated with Sankhya Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, etc., etc. Some kind of a, so that also means a sadhana, a method. Because what we have to achieve is Jiveshwara Aikyam, identity between Jiva and Ishvara. And so that is engendered by the various yogas. So yoga normally means a connection. That's what I mean. Here, however, Sri Krishna gives a totally different definition to yoga. So let us understand exactly what this means. Yoga samgitam. Samgitam means is defined as, known as. This is what yoga means. It's a very definitive enunciation of the word yoga here. This is what yoga is. What is this yoga that you are saying is samgitam? Dukkha samyoga viyogam. Dukkha samyoga viyogam means a disconnection from dukkha, means to be at the mercy of a problem-causing experience. Dukkha means problems. If you want to carry it all the way, sorrow. I mean, sorrow is an extreme form of problems. So we have problems every day. We don't call it sorrowful problem, but supposing we have a close one that has deceased or has met an accident, then we have sorrow. So dukkha can be the whole range. So anyway, and we are connected to it. We are very dependent on it. I mean, if you look at it, the chances of having problems during the day are many. It's exactly what happens. You get a phone call and saying, somebody is very ill, or you are ill, or that you find out that, my gosh, I put some money into this company and it has gone out of business. Dukkha. There are lots of problems. Your car breaks down. So the whole day is nothing but dukkha, 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 some sukha. But we are full of dukkha. So this is the dukkha samyoga. Dukkha samyoga means that you are connected to the dukkha. And the disconnection from that is the yoga samyitam. So there he is taking a very contrary approach to the definition of yoga. Sri Krishna, this is Bhagavan himself talking. He says, really, let me just tell you, the yoga really means a disconnection from dukkha. So the question is, why is he saying that? Why is he taking a contrarian? He's the one who knows everything and he's teaching me, but why is he taking a contrarian view of the definition of yoga? This can be the question, a very valid question. This we must know very well in the context of what we've been studying. Here is why the samgitam of yoga is exactly opposite to the normal understanding of yoga, which is a connection. This is almost like a disconnection is yoga. Opposite to normal connection. Why? This is why. Please see this very clearly. If you were separate from Brahman, separate from Ishvara. Ishvara is just a Brahman which is associated with the Srishti. That's what Ishvara is. But the unlimitedness, the Sarva Shaktiman, the Sarva Jnanaman, all of that is common between. This is exactly, so Brahman is like the water of the whole ocean, if the ocean was infinite. So the Brahman is like the very water of the ocean, whereas Ishvara is not only the water but the capability of making waves in the ocean. The beauty of the creation. Just in the last couple of days, if you live in this area, you'll find that the sea was so. I read this in San Francisco Chronicle just the other day, that today, today, I think, yesterday or maybe today, they were expecting 19-foot waves in the Pacific Ocean on the coast. And they said this was a very long and a beautiful article because these accidents happen all the time. They say never ever have your back to the ocean if you're walking on the beach. It's a very good advice. Very good advice. They say the water can creep up on you so quickly, and the surf and so on. So this is the grandeur of the ocean. That is the Ishvara. And the water itself, which is responsible for it, is the Brahman. Okay. Anyway, so that's the difference between the two words. You know this already. I'm sure you do. Just a reiteration. So the reason for the yoga being a separation rather than an approach of meeting something is because if you and I were different from Brahman, different from Ishvara, then the normal yoga definition of two things approaching and meeting each other would apply. So let me go over this one more time. That if you and I as jivas were different from Ishvara, then one can say, here are the sadhanas for you to unite with Ishvara. Right? It turns out you are not different from Brahman at all. You have never been different. You are not different at the present time, and there is no possibility of you being different in the future. You are the same. So if the sadhaka means the one who is trying to have moksha, and the siddha or sadhya is better. Sadhya means the one to be, what is to be achieved. If the achiever and the achieved were different, then the normal definition of yoga would apply. But if the sadhaka and the sadhya are one and the same, then you have to apply a different definition. And so that is why the normal definition of yoga doesn't really make sense. And Ishvara is himself saying is yoga samgitam dukkha samyoga viyogam tam vidyat. May you know this. So if that's the case, all right, I understand that much, so I'm good in following this argument. But then I don't know that I am the same as Brahman. Not the same as Ishvara. That's not my experience. Why am I seeking? If the seeker and the sought were to be the same, then I wouldn't be seeking. But I am seeking. I find myself. Why? And how will I know this? Aha! Thank you for asking. Sri Krishna says, he says, do you know why, what I need to do? You need to disassociate yourself from this identification with being a jiva. So just look at this. If you disassociate yourself from jivatvam, if you give up the abhimana means identification. It's a very important word in Vedanta. So abhimana means some kind of a mental conclusion. It's not factual. Because we have seen this example many, many times. And Swami Viditatmananda ji is very fond of giving this example, that if you're watching a movie, and when we do watch a movie, most of us, and so this is how the creators of the movie are so talented, because what they want you to do when you watch a movie is to adopt one of the characters that you can identify with. Yeah, this is what that's naturally done. If you watch a movie and you don't identify with anybody, which is not possible really, because that movie would not even be released. So the whole movie is so that there has to be some characters that it might take a couple of frames, Because sometimes the character that you are going to be associated with it may not come for like 10 minutes because they're all doing, background things and so on. This is the skill of making movies. But very soon there is someone that you identify with. And the manner of speaking, the manner of thinking, the situation, whatever it is, you at that point, unknowingly almost, as you're watching the movie, you identify yourself as that character. And from that point on, you are in big trouble. Because this is the yoga. This is the yoga. This is the normal yoga. Because you have now glommed on to, what's the English word for this? You can say embraced, or you are glommed on to the character of this particular person. And whatever happens to that person now has an effect on you. See, this is the interesting thing. So if there's someone who is cruel to this character, then you feel really bad, as though it is cruelty to you. And if this person has some minor triumphs, then you smile and say, wow, I'm very happy that, isn't it? This is not something make-believe, this happens. And the reason is that you have now, in Sanskritam, your abhimana is like that of a person. This is what is called dukkha yogas, dukkha samyoga. Dukkha samyoga. So, if it is a character who's very dukkhi, has a lot of problems, could even be sorrowful, then because of the samyoga to that character, you become dukkhi and you become sorrowful. So therefore, to complete this whole circle, now our understanding of this verse should be very clear. Sri Krishna says, listen, the normal yoga does not apply here. It is a viyoga. But the moment you do viyoga, for example, at the end of the movie, there is an instant viyoga. Because, it's very possible that you had some, I guess I don't have any handkerchiefs, but if you had a handkerchief and you were crying, you'd be dabbing your, sometimes, you feel like I don't want anybody to see that I'm crying. That's happened to me also a couple of times. I feel, I'm a man, I'm not supposed to cry. But I felt like crying. It hasn't happened in a long time, but it did happen. And then I would somehow pretend, and it's interesting, my wife would look at me and say, is he crying? And I'm trying to pretend, I used to try to pretend that I'm not crying. But it was so moving that you were moved to the tears because of that. And then all of a sudden, the movie is over. When the movie is over, that's when dukkha viyoga takes place. Yeah, there might be some follow-on kind of a thing. Oh my gosh, that was really a tragic movie. I'm very impressive. But at that point, the movie is over. Some leftover popcorn is still there. Lights have now come on. And the people next to you are saying, come on, move. We have to go home too. Why are you just standing? You come back to your own self, which has nothing to do with this character. Nothing. nothing to do with the character. So that's exactly what the situation is. So now let's look at this. So Ishvara says, the moment you disassociate yourself from your role as a jiva, which is an identification, which is an abhimana. And so remember I had said that the abhimana is a mental conclusion. It is a bunch of thoughts. You have decided to have an abhimana towards this character. So there in the case of movie, you had a choice. Here, you really don't have much of a choice because you were born with this identification with this character, which is you. Your body-mind complex, this character. But it is still an abhimana. You are not that. You are not that character. You are identified with yourself. This needs to be very clear. You are identified with this character some of the time. 1/3 of the time. And the other time you're not associated with this character. You are associated with some other character, a dream character, or no character at all in Sushupti. See how the play of this whole thing is? If you were the person, you'll always be that person, isn't it? It's very obvious. It's a very strong hint that Ishvara gives. We don't take it. You're only identified with it only 1/3 of the time. I was reading a text by Swami Akhandananda ji, and he pointed this out. He says, it's very interesting. What happens is that the dreams don't last very long, and they are very different from the last one. Okay, so you had a dream about something in the first part of the night, and then, excuse me, then later on in the night, you have a different dream altogether. So we have in our life, we go through thousands of dreams that are very short-lived. So Swami Akhandananda says what happens is that your ability to relate to a character in the dream doesn't gel, because it keeps changing. If the same dream were to repeat itself with the same characters, even though they are fake, you will develop a certain raga dvesha towards them. There was a case, several cases like this, but one case which was cited by Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, our Vice President of India, a great, wonderful philosopher, and had a good understanding of Vedanta. Not a perfect understanding of Vedanta. We discussed that with Swami Dayanand ji. Swami Dayanand ji says, to my knowledge, he never had a real guru. A real guru means somebody who was teaching over a length of time and clarified your doubts, and you were a student living with him. He never did that. And without that, you cannot have clarity of that. But you can come close to it. You can have enough to discuss it and so on. I'm sorry to say the same thing is talked about with Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi also, he's called Mahatma, but that Mahatma is not agreed to by people who are real Mahatmas. This is just a name given to him. He was a great person, no doubt about it. We have no qualms about it. But he was not a realized soul, no. So Radhakrishnan also was not that, even though he was a very wise. So anyway, he gave this example, Radhakrishnan did. There was a case where a person who was very poor and had a kind of a relatively miserable life had dreams that he was a king and he had a kingdom and people and wives and all that kind of a thing. And he was so enamored by it that he had the same dream many times over. I guess that's possible, anything is possible. So much so, Dr. Radhakrishnan actually pointed this out, that this man was disinterested in the normal life because it had no attraction to him. There was nothing loving about the real life that he had. Not real life, but the Jagrat Avastha, through the waking state. But he would wait for the dream to come every night. Therefore, it is said that really speaking, the lack of your commitment and sense of reality towards the dream is because it is so short-lived and so changing. And your abhimana and your commitment and your identification with you as a jiva looks so solid because it is repeated or day after day after day for so long in your life that you tend to look upon that as reality. Kind of like, I'm just making it up, but suppose, and I have met people who have liked the movies so much that they have seen this over and over again. And there was one movie that when I was younger, that I've seen 4 times. That is the only movie that I may have seen more than once. Maybe, no, I've seen a couple of movies that are more than once. This movie I've saw 4 times. It's called Bridge on the River Kwai. William Holden. And that was a very interesting one. I mean, it's not that I really wanted to see it again, but I think I enjoyed it so that it came and I would recreate it. So it's very possible that you may see a movie so often that you begin to identify with that character more than your own character. Highly unlikely, because it will be very difficult to duplicate the amount of familiarity with yourself as a character. But relatively speaking, it's possible. Anyway, what this verse, important verse, tam vidyat dukkha samyoga viyogam yoga samgitam, and see if you can find this in the Bhagavad Gita, number 23, 623, and read it. And really to understand it. So we have a little bit more to go and we are almost done. So in summary, What it says is that this yoga is of a different kind because you are erroneously identified with yourself as a human being. Erroneously. It's not a fact. And as long as you keep that identification, there is no chance for you to become totally happy. No chance. You can become relatively happy, but not unconditionally happy. And to become unconditionally happy, you have to give up identification with the jivatvam. You have to understand what happens to you when you give up the identification with jivatvam. Because you may think that I will go to zero. I have to hang on to something real here. At least I'm not totally happy, but I'm okay. So you may have a doubt that if I give this up, then who will I be? That has to be clarified. And what is said is, what are you talking about? If you give up your identification with this false character called jiva, you are already the same as Ishvara. Why? Because you always have been the same. It was just that you were dreaming. So just like when the dream ends, you don't have to unite yourself with yourself. You already are yourself. And the difference here is that you started a dream. Before the dream started, you were a normal human being. During the dream, you became an abnormal human being. And after the end of the dream, you became a normal again. But in this case, you have never been a normal human being because you have always been dreaming or some variations to that. But you have always been Brahman. You will continue to be Brahman, and after your identification with the Jivatvam ends, you will not have to do anything. You are already Brahman. Brahman means infinite, unlimited, anantam, totally happy. And so what needs to happen is, so now we can go to the second line. The first line was, tam vidyat dukkha samyoga viyogam yoga samgitam. Having defined this, he says, saha nishchayena yoktavyaha yogaha anirvinna chetasa. So here, then the question is, okay, I understand what you are saying about dukkha samyoga viyogam, yoga samgitam, all of that. Now it is, I can see that. But then how? What do I need to do? It's like saying, if I have to wake up from the dream, what is it that I need to do? Because there I can just pinch myself and I am awake. Here if I pinch myself, nothing happens. Some pain happens. So there it says, Saha nischayena yoktavyaha. Means you have to ascertain this without any doubts. Because of a lot of different, and we will go over some of this in the next few verses, because of certain habits, you might say, because of certain habits, the way of not understanding, you are not removing the doubts about the fact that you are the same as Brahman. You're not doing it. You need to do that. Have trust in yourself. Nischayena yoktavyaha yogaha anirvinna cetasa. Anirvinna cetasaha means that without any worry, without any concern, without any what's the word I was looking for? Impatience. Yeah, here Swami Dayananji had given this very beautiful example. He says that so the parents can tell a small child, this is a very nice thing to do, is to go to a nursery and or even not even go to a nursery, just get some seeds of a plant in your backyard. So supposing you have a 2-year-old, it should be done. The parent says, hey, you want to see how, you see this beautiful flowers, this small bush with lovely flowers? Do you know it came from this small seed that you can even hardly see? And the 2-year-old will say, really? How? He says, okay, let's do this. Let's go to the backyard. Okay, till the land a little bit. You do it. Okay? So on. Now pour some water into it so that it's wet. Okay, so take these seeds and you put that in and you cover it with a thin layer of the earth. So about, something. So, and then you just tap it with your hand and put some more water into it. So this 2-year-old is saying, what is going on? What is she doing? What is he doing? And so just, okay. Now, here's what we're going to do. We are going to let it germinate. You have to explain what germination is. And then wait. Wait. And you will see one day some green shoots will come up. And those green shoots will grow. And you will see every day that they all grow and grow and grow. Pretty soon they will be 3 or 4 inches tall. And then you see this plant, this has taken 3 months to grow. So this is what's going to do. So the 2-year-old says, really? Oh, that's very interesting. So the next day the 2-year-old goes and starts to dig this thing. Okay, how come nothing has happened? So the mother and father says, no, don't disturb it. Just keep it there. Keep it there. It will take a while. But you'll say, it's not happening. What can I do? This is not happening. It's going to happen. Just trust. This is the meaning of anirvinna cetasa. So he says, Nischena yoktavyaha anirvinna cetasa. Keep your shraddha and keep working. And as Swami Maheshanandji points out in his commentary, a very important commentary, that in this practice, what you have to see is that slowly see that the limitations that you have superimposed upon yourself as a jiva becoming less. And as they become less, you will see your ananda, which is the very natural ananda of Ishvara, of Brahman, which is your own, will spring up. And this will take a while. Like a 2-year-old, I should not get very impatient. Should not worry. Just have Shraddha, this will happen. And keep watering it. Keep watering it and protecting it from bugs and so on. It will happen. But this is an important thing to see, because to gain certain confidence, it is almost like, when somebody is coming and you're not able to identify the person very clearly, then go closer perhaps. Who is this person? So approach it with some effort. So that those efforts will be talked about and so on. So there you will see, and so now the other thing is that as this process is being begun, this is where the initial aspects that we went through, which is to introduce that really, as opposed to the ananda randomly approaching you, randomly meaning somewhat randomly, somewhat not randomly, like eating an ice cream is not random. Unless you are sick or you have some problems with your, like supposing you had a dental surgery and you cannot, there's somebody who's injected and so you cannot even feel anything. There the ice cream will not really feel good to you. But otherwise, eating an ice cream is a sure short experience of happiness. All random. So as opposed to that, there is a very structure about it, which comes about in its entirety when you are asleep. So we went through all of that. So once you know the structure, how your own ananda, so this is what the Vishayananda, Vasanananda, just going to sleep, before going to sleep, after coming out from sleep, and then Vishayananda, Pratibimbananda, we saw all that. And so that is the structure. Now trust that structure. Trust it. It's like a 2-year-old who was staying, trust it. Just, I'm the parent, I know I've done this many times. And this is why people are asked to put down 3 or 4 seeds, because one of them may be dead and you don't want to disappoint the child. So you put 3 or 4 of them, one of them is surely going to come up. And it does. And as it comes up, the child has a little bit more shraddha. Yeah, my mom and dad were right, there is some plant in there. It was just on that point. I think I won't have any more time to go further. I was thinking of going through 3 or 4 more verses, but I won't. I think this is enough of a subject matter that we can just close. But it was interesting. I was reading and in English, I don't remember the name of the person. I think I should, but he's the one I think who discovered penicillin, which was an accidental discovery. But I think is it Watson or somebody. Anyway, I was reading about him. He was saying that when I was growing up, I was encouraged to do some experimentation of science. So he says one of the things I found was that all living beings need oxygen. So this was explained to me, that really you need oxygen to be alive. And so unfortunately they would enclose a glass jar with some insects inside, and they would ask him to see how long the insect can be alive, because once it has exhausted all the oxygen in the jar, then it cannot stay alive. So he says, I used to do some experiments, large bugs, small bugs, size of it, and so on. He says, then it occurred to me, what about plants? Plants are also living beings. And I should also see how long the plants would survive in a closed environment. So he put some plants and enclosed it in the glass jar. And he says, to my great surprise, it never died. It actually grew. And he says, I cannot believe how that happened. So he went to the teachers or his parents, I forget, and they said, aha, there is something fundamentally different between animals and human beings and plants. How? The plants actually generate oxygen. They don't need external oxygen. And he says, this was a great discovery for me. Wonderful discovery. So similarly, I think we have to positively identify our own nature. We have to really be very thoughtful in measuring how my happiness comes to me. And once it is clear to you based on certain scientists, so all the Shastras says this is exactly how it is. Your Ananda is your own Swarupa. You're looking, all of those kinds of things. Then I have to patiently see how it is working. And I cannot be hasty about it. I cannot be arbitrary about it. I can't be impatient about it. I have to, if that's what I want to do, then I need to observe where my happiness is coming from. And if I do, you will see that as you diminish your fascination for happiness from outside, and you observe it, measure it, see your progress, you will see slowly that your own joy, which is you, increases. And you can accelerate it through the various means that we have been talking about and we will continue to focus on as we study some more. So this is the Ananda Mimamsa. This is what we are engaged in studying. So with that, I close the class for today. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. And you observe it, measure. Oh yeah, he did become the President of India, Vandana. Thank you. I wasn't sure about it. Ah, your mother's philosophy professor at BHU. Interesting. Yes, Alexander Fleming. Yeah, that's right. You guys are so much more knowledgeable than I am. And any knowledge that I have is slowly, other than Atma Jnanam, it's different. That is not dependent on age because your own. But all the knowledge of things, people, situations, slowly is going away and I don't remember it anymore. But as far as my own nature goes, that's a different thing. You don't need to remember it, it is your own. So, but thanks for, yeah, it was Alexander Fleming. So nice to see you, all of you, quite a few of you. So I'll wait to see if anybody has any questions. But it seems like things were clear to you, and I appreciate your studentship. So if there's no other questions, then I take your leave and hope